What's up, my juice lovers? Welcome to the Cold Pressed Truth. This is Charlie Wetlaufer. Today, I'm going to give you some tips on how to know if the quote-unquote raw juice you're buying is actually raw. Because did you know that in the U.S., it is not illegal to label things as raw that actually have been pasteurized or HPP'd or cooked or processed in any way, because there is no quote-unquote standard of identity for the term raw. A standard of identity are terms that the FDA regulates and says, okay, if you call something fresh, here are the guidelines for it to be actually considered fresh. And there has not been a standard of identity set up yet for the word raw. So some juices are labeled as raw that actually aren't, or they may just signal that it's raw when it's not. They're not required to label the fact if it's been pasteurized or HPP'd. So all these things lead to a very confusing marketplace for juice. So I'm going to clear some of that up today. So first, I'm going to go over 6 ways. So this is an article I'm writing that will be published soon on the Good Nature blog at goodnature.com/blog. 5 ways to tell the juice isn't actually raw. It's actually 6 ways. Number 1, the juice isn't refrigerated at the store. If juice is sitting on a shelf, not in the refrigerator, that means it's been pasteurized. Because only juice has been heat pasteurized is quote-unquote shelf stable, meaning it doesn't have to be in the refrigerator. So even if it's called cold pressed or raw, if it's not a refrigerator, buy something else if you're looking for raw juice. Number 2, the lid is one of those Snapple type lids that when you open it, it pops. Those metal lids that have the compressed little snapper thing on it. That is a clear indication that the juice has been hot filled. And the reason that's true is because the way that those popping lids work is that they fill the bottle with hot liquid, then screw on the cap, and when the liquid cools, it pulls that little popper lid down because the cold liquid takes up less space than hot liquid, so it creates a vacuum in there which pulls that little snapper down. So then when you release the vacuum, the lid goes and pops up. So you know that the liquid was hot when it went in the bottle with one of those lids. So I know specifically there's a brand of quote-unquote cold-pressed juice at 7-Eleven that has those snapper lids on them. So that is a clear indication that juice was not raw when it went in the bottle. Another way to tell is if the expiration date is very far in the future. So for example, if you look for the printed expiry date on the bottle and it says it's like 30 days from now or 2 weeks from now or something, then you know it's not raw. Because the longest you can normally give shelf life for raw juice is 7 days, and that's stretching it. Most companies will give 3 to 5 days. So if it's 7 days or longer, that's a good indication that it's not actually raw. Number 4, the juice is labeled as cold pressured instead of cold pressed. The term cold pressured, and I've mentioned this several times in my other videos, is a very confusing term, and I think intentionally confusing term, developed by the HPP industry. So they can call something cold pressured instead of high pressure processed, which actually just means that it's been processed with HPP, but it looks so similar to the word cold pressed, they knew it would confuse customers into thinking the juice is raw when it's actually been HPP'd. Now, cold pressed doesn't necessarily mean raw either, but most people, I think, when they hear cold pressed juice, they just kind of assume it's raw. So if you see the term cold pressured, that means it's been high pressure processed to extend the shelf life. Number 5, the juice brand is a wholesale/national brand of juice. And the reason that this is a good indicator the juice isn't raw is because the juice is made in a factory somewhere and then sold wholesale to grocery stores. It is a law that juice must be processed to extend the shelf life and to kill about 99% of microbes in the juice. So, and they can achieve that that microbial reduction by using heat pasteurization or HPP or UV. So yeah, if you're buying a like brand of juice that's made in California and you're in Texas or Nebraska or something, if I was a betting man, I would bet 100% of the time that has been processed. And I wrote a little pro tip here that although it's true that it's illegal to wholesale raw juice, if you're buying local juice, sometimes they'll allow it in certain regions, right? Like you might have a health department in a state somewhere, a localized area that will allow like a juice bar to let the cafe or the grocery store down the street sell the raw juice. So it's not 100% sure all the time that if you buy wholesale juice that it's not raw, but almost 100% of the time. So I just wanted to make sure that's clear. So if you're buying juice at a local grocery store, it's made by the juice bar 2 blocks away, it might be raw, but probably not. But you should ask. Okay, next. Even though some brands may not label the juice as raw, they'll use these labeling tricks to signal that it's raw, so that they're not telling you it's raw exactly, but they're using words or terms that make you think it's raw. And again, this is intentional to confuse consumers. So number one, the word cold pressured, which I already described. It's that addition of the URED on the end of cold press. That means it's been high pressure processed. Number two, I've seen juice use this term, made from raw ingredients. Duh. All juice is made from raw fruit and vegetables, but it doesn't mean the juice itself is raw. Very tricky. Made from raw ingredients doesn't mean it's raw. Number three, you'll see they'll say like perishable, consumed within 3 days after opening. So that signals to you that, oh, this must be raw juice because it goes bad in 3 days. That's not actually what that means. You should look for the actual expiration date. And again, if that expires far in the future, you know the juice isn't raw. Number four, using the word raw when describing other things other than the juice itself. For example, raw ingredients, like I mentioned already, or they might actually be in the brand name itself. So if you're buying juice and the brand is like Rawlicious or Raw Juice or something, that doesn't necessarily mean the juice itself is actually raw. So just, look for the other signals on it. Okay, you don't have to label processing on the label, so you don't have to put it, this has been pasteurized or HPP'd. Some brands do it. Number one, for transparency, but also because juice is technically safer if it's been pasteurized or HPP'd, because if there's like E. coli in juice, heat pasteurization will kill the E. coli, and so will HPP if it's done correctly. So some people prefer to buy pasteurized juice or HPP juice. That's totally fine. If you're giving it to a toddler or something, maybe you feel safer doing that. I give my baby raw juice. I'm not that worried about it. It's pretty rare that juice is actually going to make someone sick, but it is safer to give them pasteurized juice. So that's why some brands choose to label it. So if they don't have to label it, and some try to intentionally confuse you, and actually it's not illegal to label it as raw when it's actually not, how do you know if it's actually raw? Okay. Well, this one's easy. Buy from a place where you can see them making the juice, whether it's a juice bar or a grocery store. Like if they make it on site at the grocery store, then you know it's raw, okay? Pasteurizers and HPP machines are huge, hundreds of thousands of dollars for the machine. So it's very unrealistic that they would be making it and pasteurizing it at the location. That being said, if you look at a brand like Whole Foods or another large grocery chain, they may have some things made in a commissary kitchen. So one location, one kitchen off-site that makes stuff and sends it to many grocery stores. That juice may not be raw. That juice may have been high-pressure processed or pasteurized. But if it's made in the actual store you're buying it, that is a very good indicator that the juice is raw, almost 100% of the time. And if you're not sure, you can ask. Be like, hey, is this juice made here? And if they don't know, I don't know, you can decide not to buy it, or just buy it knowing that it may not be raw. But what I recommend is seek out the local juice bars that you can see them making the juice. If they're not making it up front, maybe they have a machine in the back. Just ask them, like, is this juice made here? If the answer is yes, then it's raw. So that's how you know for sure. Okay, and for a bonus, how do you know if the juice is actually cold pressed? We talked about raw, now I'm talking about cold press. So cold press means the juice has been pressed, by a moving plate, thousands of pounds of force. The produce has been ground up and slowly pressed, all the juice out. And that's what it means to be cold pressed. So it's not cold pressed if it's made in a spinning centrifugal juicer or slow turning auger juicer, those like slow turning screws that slowly press it through a metal screen. That's not cold pressed. That is just grinding and masticating. Ask them, what do you use to make the juice? If they tell you it's made on a good natured machine, thumbs up. It's a legitimate cold pressed juice, and you're buying the best stuff you can buy. All right, so that's what I have for you guys today. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. See you next time. Peace, love, juice.